Hi, I'm Rachel Mullins, President and CEO of the Putnam Museum and Science Center. We're moving online to support our community so that our kids can continue to do these great science experiments and have some kitchen chemistry fun at home. But there's also something for the adults. We're going to be including some tours of our exhibits, both our rotating as well as our permanent exhibits here at the Putnam, so that we can stay in touch with our audiences and give you something fun to do while you're at home. Today's exhibit, we're featuring our most recent, the suffrage movement. It's called Liberated Voices, Changed Lives, and it's the story of the Quad Cities suffrage movement, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, August 1920. So today we're featuring some of that exhibit. It's a Putnam original because it's drawn from our collection, and it really represents the best that the Putnam offers our community, that blend of science, culture, and history. The exhibit really is built on these series of vignettes that feature technologies that were changing at the time. These are all drawn from the Putnam collection, so you can imagine the warehouse of objects that we have here, some 170,000 cataloged objects in the Putnam collection. Some of them are on display here today, including this wonderful Voss washing machines. This was a major change in women's work where we went from the washboard, hand washing, to what was known as the electric washing machine that was invented in 1908. Both of these objects are really special because Voss washing machines actually were a local company, and they were one of the first washing machines available on the market as this technology shifted to electric. We're also featuring our sad and joyful irons from the collection. So you might remember a time when there used to still be, and there is in some countries still, the use of what's called a sad iron. So it's a manual process, an iron that's actually heated up on a stove top or even on coals in some communities still. And that shift with electricity to the joyful iron, which was lighter weight. It was a plug-in, so it didn't have to be reheated, and it had a much higher level of efficiency for women to be able to do their ironing at home. You can imagine at the time with the types of fabrics that were in the market, how much ironing was done for women, the children, men going to work, those stiff collars, interior curtains, things like that, all were ironed on a regular basis in these households and took up a lot of time for women. And then, of course, the sewing technologies, the change from hand sewing and darning socks. Can you imagine that we used to darn socks? And what it meant to bring in the electric sewing machine with the paddle action and how much more efficient that would be. We're also featuring our pump action vacuum cleaner here in the collection. It's a bit of an oddity, actually. Not a lot of people realize that vacuum cleaners used to be a pump action that worked on a series of bellows built into the equipment, and they would be hand pumped as they were being used to vacuum floors. With the electric vacuum, obviously, a lot of time savings. It's all really changes in women's lifestyle like these. It was changes in technology that allowed women to get more active in their community. They entered the world of work. They were joining clubs and ushered in this era of the women's civic organizations. They were out in our community making trouble. They were feeling their own power and raising their voices together. The change was occurring throughout the period, really, for the change in the 20th century, but also resulted in passage of the vote, women's right to thrive, a lot of changes in women's lifestyles. Their change in their everyday life went from having to be accompanied, where they would have these very small purses. They might be carrying a handkerchief or smelling salts or some simple hair barrettes. After the passage of suffrage movement and the empowerment of women, every day changed for them. They were unaccompanied. They were on their own. They were empowered with makeup. They had a driver's license, a library card, and even this lovely little object. This actually is a little poetry book that hides vials that women would hide their liquor in, because the passage of suffrage also brought the passage of the temperance movement. Dramatic changes in the world of work and in fashion. If you can imagine how slowly fashion changes over time, the slight differences from season to season. And all of a sudden, over the course of 1 or 2 decades, there was a major change, both from the undergarments, women became more empowered in their sexuality, but also in their everyday fashion, as they look at the difference in the length of hemline here. To lose 12 to 14 inches off a hemline in such a short time, remarkable. We're also going to feature one more technology that you may or may not be aware of, but this actually is a wonderful old ice box from our collection. This came out of Cook's Point, which was an immigrant community for a Hispanic community here in the area. This was a norm, where ice boxes like this, where there would be a cabinet style, metal lined, large blocks of ice would be built in that would be changed out daily or 2 or 3 times a week to provide for cooling and for food safety. Electricity meant electric refrigerators. So this is a wonderful example of one of the electric refrigerators from the Putnam's collection. And you can see that cooling unit on the top. So major changes, not only in the amount of time that it would take for women, but also in the level of food safety that was provided. In addition to the many objects, furniture, clothing, and equipment that's featured in the exhibit, we also have a series of video vignettes that were created specifically for the show. We have 16 of these wonderful stories of men and women from the Quad Cities community that were both for and against suffrage, including our own Dr. Mabel Palmer. Hello. Nice to meet you. Who was a wonderful local figure and supporter of the suffrage movement. There's actually great photography of the Palmer smokestacks donning these big banners, votes for women. The story of suffrage in the Quad Cities was very unique because of the large immigrant communication that we had. So you'll also see some of these vignettes are against, including by some of our German immigrants. They were concerned, and they were right to be, that the suffrage movement would also usher in the age of temperance. So that was a major change and made the Quad Cities suffrage story very unique. We're also featuring a voting booth and some local contemporary issues around women's rights, including the opportunity, if you had the chance, would you vote for the Equal Rights Amendment? So we're actually offering a voting booth that people can participate in to decide. This was sort of a long time in the 80s, but failed ratification. We're going to ask our community, yes or no? Yes. I'd like to cast my vote, and I think the yeses win. So we're excited to be showing you this little sneak peek of suffrage. It was open for such a short time before the museum closed with the recent health emergency. We're looking forward to the day when we can reopen our doors and welcome you back to the Putnam. Until then, you can enjoy some of our exhibits and some of our education offerings online. We're thinking about you, Quad Cities, and we can't wait to have you back.